morning, everyone, and welcome to the last area committee of the Skye and Raasay area committee for this council term. And as you can see, we've got a number of items that are good news stories, I'm sure, as we finish the end of this council session. And again, I think it's a testament to all the officers and the councillors locally that have worked well and driven a lot of the vision and the drive that we've all had over the last few years, despite the pandemic. I think people have worked very hard. So I think to finish this council term with an agenda like this is I think very positive news today. So there's no apologies for absence today. I don't know if there's any declarations of interest. You had any, Alistair, or has anyone got any declarations of interest?
I've not received any from members, Chair.
No. Okay, as always, this meeting will be recorded and will be uploaded to the Highland Council YouTube page for archiving. Just looking at the agenda, if everybody's okay, that we'll follow item 8 with item 11, just a slight change in the running order. If everyone's okay with that, yeah? Okay, so we're on to item 3, which is the housing revenue account, and that's for garage rentals. And we're joined by Rory McLeod, who is the housing manager. So I'll just hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. The garage rent report is before you, seeking approval for a 1% increase recommended by officers in garage rents for Skye and Raasay. That's consistent with the 1% council house rent increase that was approved at the Housing and Property Committee, at the last Housing and Property Committee. The current weekly rent for a garage for a council tenant in Skye is £6.50. For a non-council house tenant, it's £8.03. So the weekly increase of 1% would be 7 pence for a council house tenant or 8 pence for a non-council house tenant. There are 5 garages in Skye, so that'll represent an annual revenue of just over £1,700 for the year. So I'm happy to take any questions that members might have at this point.
Okay, has anyone got any questions or comments for Rory? No. So you see there the recommendations before us in 2.1. Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, that was short and quick, Rory. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you. So item 4, the minutes that are for our information from our last meeting, and they were approved at the Highland Council on the 10th of December. And again, they're just for noting. So we're on to item 5, which is Police Scotland, the local committee performance report. And we're joined this morning with Jenny Valentine, who is Chief Inspector. So you can introduce yourself, and then it's your first time here with us, Jenny, and I'm sure we'll have some questions at the end of your report.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me along. I'm here on behalf of Ross McCartney, who's obviously your local inspector over there, but is on leave today. He had actually intended to come in his leave, but personal circumstances didn't allow. So I took the opportunity just to actually come and meet everybody. So I'm the area commander for South Highland, so I cover not only yourselves but also Loch Aber, Badenoch, Spain, Nairn. So I've got basically the whole sweep of the Highland area below Inverness is mine for my area. So the report is there for you, which I'm sure you've had an opportunity to go through before it. I'm willing to take any questions on any elements of it, but there's a few things, if I may, that I would like to kind of highlight to you. So first of all, the road safety and road crime, I know that this is something that is pertinent and of a concern locally within the Skye area. So it was that reassurance that we have had on almost on a monthly basis now. We're getting additional support from Roads policing units coming over from the Fort William area. We're lucky enough to have the hostel in Portree, as you'll be aware. So we're bringing them over on a monthly basis at least in order to provide additional support. The plea I have from Ross is that we're getting the camera vans over for speeding, but would be welcome any additional locations that councillors felt that would be useful to have that high profile resource in place in order to target any local concerns that you have. Now, obviously, we have a number of locations that we are aware of and we monitor it on a routine basis, but if there's any additional ones that councillors would like to be covered, then please do get in touch with us and let us know about that. The other element I would talk about, the antisocial behaviour side of things. So there are drugs obviously within the Skye area, as you will be aware. It's an interesting phenomenon. Obviously, I've got the whole of South Highland that we do have information coming in around drugs misuse in particularly the Portree and Broadford area, but particularly Portree. We have a number of key individuals there who we closely monitor, and there have been 3 drug search warrants in the last period that we've executed in the area, and we are actively targeting a nominal at the moment who we believe is starting to come into the area, which gives us some concerns, an Inverness individual. But what we don't see in Skye that I have in kind of Lochaber and Nairn is the kind of fallout that you normally see from drugs misuse. So normally that leads to an increase in antisocial behaviour, violence, and also dishonesties as people try to, make money for their drug addictions. So we're not seeing that fallout, and long may that continue in Skye. But it is something that we have to really closely monitor, and we're getting additional resources over from Inverness to do some targeted work around that. I see a hand gone up.
No, it's okay. We'll wait till the end, Jenny.
Oh, right. No, thank you. So one of the things that Ross is keen to do is the alcohol and drug partnership is linking in with them to see what proactive work we can do, and if there's any preventative work that we can do. As we all know, enforcement isn't the only option that we should go down, and we need to look at that bigger picture around things. So he's going to be linking in with the alcohol and drugs partnership at what additional work we can support over and above the enforcement that we are looking to do in that area. We did have a concerning incident, I'm sure Ross has briefed you on, whereby an individual was hiding drugs in the Portree, outdoors in Portree, and 2 of our officers were assaulted when they dealt with that individual. And that gives me great concern. So bringing the additional resource over from Inverness, we're seeing an increase in our taser trained officers will be happening within the Skye and Lochaber area, including there is a wider Highland rollout, but within that area, just to give that that resource and that capability to the officers when they're starting to deal with it. Because, as I say, we don't see the same fallout as we see with drugs misuse elsewhere, but it does give me concern that if we're starting to see individuals wishing to present violence to the police, that it's a slippery slope, frankly, and one that we need to kind of make sure that we're targeting there. In relation to the other kind of crimes that we kind of look at, we are seeing generally most of our kind of thefts and house break-ins are reducing in the area, which is really positive. However, as is the trend right across Scotland and the UK, frauds continue to be on the increase, with more and more complex ways of frauds being committed by the perpetrators, generally from out with the country, to be honest. And it's been a bit of one of these things that as we promote that there are these frauds going on, we're actually seeing frauds where people are claiming, to be from banks who are targeting frauds, and that gives us some concerns. And that can happen to anyone anywhere in the country, because a lot of it is obviously online basis. So we are seeing that increase, and just need to continue reinforcing our message in relation to that, and looking at when we do get a victim of a fraud, particularly if it's somebody that we identify that has some kind of vulnerability, making sure that we put additional measures around them, maybe family support networks, so that they're this doesn't happen again. And we do have good cooperation with the banks in relation to that if they see some unusual transactions on somebody's account, particularly vulnerable people's accounts, they bring that to our attention. So it's that's an uphill battle that we are facing within policing as it becomes even more complex, and as people use online features more and more. Most of our vulnerabilities, I'm pleased to report, within your area have reduced. The numbers which you get for kind of sexual crimes and things are blessedly very, very small, but as we know, in small communities, 1 or 2 can have a significant impact, not only on the individuals but their wider family and their community. So we're pleased to see that is kind of reducing there. And then the serious and organised crime elements of that, as I say, we do have this individual that we are starting to get information that may be looking to come into Skye, and that's something which we've had work ongoing this weekend to try and target these individuals, because that's the last thing that we're needing, is to see that kind of coming into the local area there, and spreading out from elsewhere in the division. So we are actively dealing with that. As I say, and we do have other resources coming in over and above our local police resources to try and manage that. The only other things I would mention that Ross asked me to is, I know there's been concerns raised previously in this forum about 101 calls and the length of time it's taking for these calls to be answered. So as he probably explained to you, we had significant staffing issues with COVID over the period, and trying to get the social distancing that we needed within a call centre environment, and that meant the prioritisation of 999 calls. This has been highlighted as an issue nationally, and it's something which is now monitored on a daily basis to make sure that that's an improving picture, which I'm pleased to say that it is. And we're getting far less complaints about those delays. But as always, if you are seeing, or being any of your, your members, any of your members of the community are reporting to you any significant delays, please bring them to our attention, because I think the only way we can do this is to keep highlighting if that is an issue, and keep on top of it. But I do feel, certainly from the other reporting I've done, that is an improving picture, but it's something which we need to just maintain the momentum behind. And the last thing I would mention at this stage for questions is visitor management. We'll all be very conscious that we're starting to head into the visitor management period. So just that reassurance that, similarly to last year, Ross and his team will have resources available. We'll be doing the engagement with the planning around the visitor management concerns that are raised, and we will participate obviously actively in trying to prevent anything where we can, and then enforcement where we have to. And we are getting 2 more secondees in for the summer, so that's been approved. We've got one of them starting at the end of next month, and the second one starts at the end of April. So that's 2 additional dedicated resources to help support over the visitor management, the kind of peak period for Skye and the Loch area. So that's as much as I say. I'll take questions on any other element of it or anything I've said. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Inspector. That was a very detailed presentation, so appreciate that this morning. Just go over to John Finlayson first.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. That was good. I mean, and I enjoyed looking at the report. Okay, so just a couple of comments and questions. So in terms of numbers, we saw the press headline that there was number cut by stealth in the Highlands. So from what you're saying, that given we're getting 2 new secondees, I'm assuming that the number of officers in this area, there's not going to be a change there. So that's encouraging to hear. In terms of community engagement, I mean, I do get a few comments from community councils, etc., where we're not really getting a police community engagement. So it'd be quite good to know, can we maybe improve on that? But what would also be helpful, I think, Jenny, would be if we as members could get maybe even just a list of who the officers are now on Skye and Raasay, because we know there are changes. It'd be quite good to know who the key leads are. I mean we know about Yanni, and we know people about, but there's been a lot of changes. So it'd be quite good to get a list of who the officers are and where they're based, and maybe who we could contact. You mentioned there the drugs issue in Portree, and we might have got an update about a situation. Well, we haven't. I don't think we're really getting many updates. I've got to be honest. So it would be good to maybe, when there are key issues like that, and then community members contact us. Quite often we're in the dark, so we don't expect to hear everything operationally, but maybe high profile issues, even just to have that information would be really, really, really good. So thank you for that. In terms of Ross's appointment, we haven't heard whether he's still acting or substantive, so it'd be quite good to hear where we are with that one. And my last comment is, I know that during COVID there were concerns about the whole county lines agenda across Highland, and through COVID it was becoming more of an issue a Highland wide. And it's really just to ask, has that impacted in our area, or is it more sort of round about the Inverness and the Inner Murray Firth area? So that's my questions and comments, Jenny.
No, thank you, John, and I'll go through those. So the community engagement, the community councils, yes, so actually Ross, myself, my other two inspectors, we're sitting down, we've got an actual workshop in person, which will be nice to do next month, to kind of go through that and refresh that and really look at what we're doing. We saw a drop off, some community councils just kind of ceased to be able to function during the COVID period, and we recognise that it's time that we need to step that up and look at our community engagement. So within your area, I think, oh goodness, I've tested my brain now, is it 32 or 28 within your area community councils, and there's a nominated officer for each one, but you're right, we've had some staff changes. So what I'll do is I'll get that list of the community councils, who their relevant officer is, their contact details, and I'll get that circulated so that if you get a query through from a community council, you know exactly who they should be liaising with. But I'll also be making it clear to those officers that I expect their community council to know who they are. So that'll be the other side of it as well. And we have had a number of changes there. So we've got a new sergeant come in, Neil Graham. So I'll get a refreshed list of who the supervisors are, so that you have that kind of information available to you, so that you can direct people on, or if you have queries yourself for that. The update regarding the staffing, yeah, there's, as I say, it's 2 additional staff are actually coming over to Skye and Raasay. So there's no planned reduction in the staffing numbers over in the area at the moment for that. So that's useful and good. And to be honest with you, I don't think we could reduce them anymore. I think, you know, the officers are at capacity, and for safe level of response, we need what we've got. And I'd certainly fight any suggestion, which there hasn't been, I would say, in regards to any reduction in the numbers there. Ross is post, so Ross was successful at the last promotion panel, so I'm absolutely delighted by that, and there'll be decisions made within the next couple of weeks as to where people will be going and what the postings will be, so we should get some clarity for you in the next couple of weeks as to whether Ross will be staying with you or not. So I will get that through to you. The kind of heads up element about incidents, yeah, that's something that I'll discuss, because I do think it's useful, particularly in Skye and Lochhalsh, because our officers are part of the community as well. So, you know, if they've been affected by being presented with violence, then their families are going to know that, and that's going to be out in the community, and that could cause concerns. So I think it's important that you're aware of that, either just to keep it to yourself, you know, in case, but just for your awareness, so that if you are hearing things to the community, you can support ourselves and our officers. So we'll look to make sure that in future you get quicker updates in relation to things like that have happened. Have I missed anything, John?
County lines.
County lines, yes, sorry. I knew there was one that I hadn't managed to write down. So no, we haven't seen that. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but at the moment what we're finding is that the county line stuff is mainly around the Inverness area. We are starting to get some information in the Badenoch and Strathspey area, and there has been some very tentative in Lochaber, but it's comparative to what's been faced in Inverness, it's been quite minimal, and as I say, there's nothing so far has come over to the Skye and Lochhalsh area.
Thank you, Jenny. Councillor Callum MacLeod.
Morning, Jenny, and thanks for your report. I noticed it was welcome your comments regarding engagement with traffic, perhaps speed concerns, particularly around the trunk road aspect of the road network here on Skye. And I just wondered, along the issue of road safety, there's been a considerable amount of publicity recently regarding changes in the highway code for cyclists. You know, obviously active travel is something we're very much looking towards for the future with cycling. There is increased bicycle distances that have to be observed when cyclists are feeling vulnerable. I just wondered if there's anything your road safety team perhaps have got that they could look to try and raise awareness for this for motorists. Thanks.
Yes, no, thank you for that. Yeah, that change has come about, and I think as we start seeing improving weather, we are going to obviously get more cyclists back on the road, beyond the hardy ones that are currently out there at the moment. So there's two kind of themes to that. So there will be a number of media releases coming out as we head into the better weather. That's already scheduled in around cycle safety and for road users around that. We also have an operation which I think has actually been run in Skye before, called Close Pass. And that's where we put police officers out in civilian clothes on bikes with a support vehicle to try and educate the drivers in the area and also take any action that is required. So that's something that as we move into the summer months, we look to get that resource across from Inverness and run a couple of those just to raise awareness of it and combine that with that publicity and reminder to all road users regarding the changes in the highway code. So we'll commit to doing that as we see the improving weather.
Thank you. Councillor Callum Munro, apologies.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Jenny. Thank you for speaking to the report and for your detailed summary too. I think, and a note to the new format, which I think is fine, it's good. I think we'll get used to it. I think Councillor Finlayson's comments about just being aware of who the officers are, which officers are responsible for a particular community council is really important to build these community links and to sustain them. I think they probably go up and down like the peaks and troughs, depending on where we are, but I think it's important we sustain that. I also like the answer you gave to Councillor Finlayson about councillors being made aware of incidents, especially a serious incident, which you described. And I think us being aware, and I like how you said we are here to support our communities. And we can do that if we're aware. If we're not aware, we can't do that. So I think that's glad to hear you respond like that. It's quite a mixed picture looking at the road offences, driving offences. Huge drop in speeding compared to the previous year, but still higher than the average. And other things in terms of careless driving and drug driving, still high figures. What proportion, I wonder, are these offenders are visitors, and what proportion would be local people? That's, with so many visitors for much of a year. I wonder if you've got any can give any indication how many visitors are committing these road traffic offences. The other question, I was interested in the phrase cuckooing in terms of county lines. You've responded to that, and I presume there's no such thing as the cuckooing phenomenon in our ward, hopefully not. Thanks, Jenny.
No, absolutely. So I'll start with the cuckooing. I mean, the concept there, and that's something which I think communities have to be really aware of, and that's where you have somebody with some kind of vulnerability and their house becomes, you know, a location where people effectively take over their home and use it for criminal acts. What we sometimes see, which is not the organised crime side of things, is you'll maybe get people with vulnerabilities where, particularly for alcohol abuse, where people will use it as a drinking den, and that's kind of the lowest level of that, but which, you know, we could see within our Skye and Raasay area, but we aren't seeing it being used by the kind of organised crime groups at this moment in time. So, but that's why keeping on top of the vulnerabilities and understanding the vulnerability in our community is really important, so we know people are, you know, getting taken advantage of there. The road policing, the road traffic thing, that's a really interesting question, and that's something which I'll maybe see if I can get some research done on, because, you know, anecdotally what I would say is that as I read through every incident every morning, and I think some of the careless driving things certainly that I've seen recently have been visitors to the area. And it's, you know, inappropriate overtakes on the routes, or not understanding how to use single track roads, and some of that carelessness that we've seen around that. What I would say is a lot of the MOT offences tend to be the more local ones. And as I say, that's just anecdotally from, as I say, going through every incident every morning, but that would be the themes I would expect to come out of research. But that's something which we can look at, Councillor, to see if there is patterns there, and if there is more driver education needed for visitors coming into the area, which obviously is a big national campaign that gets put on by our roads policing unit. But I'll get some work done around that and see if we can get a report to you for the next time as to what that looks like. But as I say, anecdotally, I think carelessness, probably more visitor, but the no MOT is just likely to be locals.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions too around speeding and road safety, and it's something that's highlighted quite regularly at our meetings as well as with police and the council and Transport Scotland, but maybe some partnership working. I don't know what that would look like in terms of looking at some of the locations that we always bring up and make representation in terms of constituents getting in touch with us about various roads that are a hotspot for speeding or just dangerous as a result of, again, no paths maybe at the side of the road. Callum McLeod brings it up quite regularly where he lives. But it would be good just to maybe have a bit more community kind of work in terms of that. We've tried to reduce the speed at various places, but it's quite a struggle to see that happen. But maybe more partnership working with the police might help alleviate some of that. And the other thing which is brought up time and time again, and you've highlighted it well today, is the drugs. And I think we're all aware in our communities just what a problem it is. And again, we all know that Scotland has the highest death from drugs in Europe. And yeah, it's such a hidden world, yet we all know it's there. And sometimes you wonder, what is the solution to it? It's becoming such a problem, and I'm sure the police have just limited resource too, as much as they do a good work, and their intelligence is quite exemplary. But what I suppose can communities do in terms of dealing with that, or even seeing suspicious things, like you said earlier about a house being used, people back and forth, and I know sometimes people always get a bit concerned that they don't want to get involved, but also their identity would be protected if they were to maybe just say that they feel there's some suspicious behaviour. But I suppose my question is, what is the solution? Because it seems to be getting a bigger and bigger problem, and it's all ages as well. It's quite a big issue. And the other question I've got in relation to the drugs problem is that you don't see some of the issues as a result of drugs. I don't know how you worded it exactly. You don't see such issues in this area as a result of drug taking, and I wonder why that is the case. Because obviously there is such a big problem.
Goodness, if I knew the solution to the drugs problem, it would serve me well. I think what we can do with the drugs is that enforcement isn't the only option. It can't be the only option, which is the general option that we have available to us. And I think that's, as Ross kind of highlighted to me, re-engaging with the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership and looking at where we can support people, and whether the solution is to go more for those who are dealing and facilitating rather than, for the lower level users themselves, and how we put that support in. We often see links with mental health issues in respect of drugs misuse as well. So identifying those vulnerabilities and making sure that we collectively, as in the statutory agencies, are looking at individuals holistically and what their needs are as an individual, whether it be housing, whether it be social needs, whether it be health needs, or the elements that we look after as well, and just trying to actually treat people as individuals, and look at the wider circumstances which has led them to any addiction issues that they have. So I think it's really important that we do engage with Alcohol Drugs Partnership and look at the other issues, because enforcement alone isn't going to do it. Every year we get lots of enforcement and it isn't stopping our drugs problem, it isn't stopping our drugs death. So you're absolutely right, there has to be more to it. And what we commit to is that engagement with the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership. I think if the community are seeing things, there are options for anonymous reporting, and maybe we need to push that out a bit more so that people, if they do feel that they want to do something, but I get why people perhaps don't want to overtly do so, particularly in small communities, we maybe need to do a little bit more pushing around the anonymous reporting options like the Crime Stoppers, which are actually very effective, and we genuinely don't know who the people are. So there is that level of anonymity for people if they want to do that. And I think also people don't want it to think that people are just being nosy, whereas in actual fact it could be the little bit of information that actually helps us protect somebody. So that's something that we need to kind of have a look at, I think, just to highlight the options for anonymous reporting. In relation to your kind of road concerns, but yeah, I think that's, I've seen it. We've had some good work over in the Badenoch and Strathspey area where we've engaged really with the road safety officer from the local authority. We've had the surveys done, and then engaged with the community to try and think, right, what else can we do? What else should we do? What else can we do? And that's something that we maybe need to look at that approach on Skye as well, is to kind of get the surveys, get the data, and then as you get together. And actually what worked really well there was actually everyone just going to the location, because I think you can all look at a map or you might know it, but if you actually can go collectively and meet with somebody in the community there and actually just see it for yourself, I think it helps explain the problem a bit better. So if there are areas that you think it would benefit from that collective site visit and see what the issues are, then absolutely we'll highlight them to Ross and we'll participate fully in that process, because that's really important, and only the people who live there understand really what the issue is. So yeah, we'd absolutely commit to getting involved in that.
Thank you, Chief Inspector. I don't think there's any other questions or comments, so thank you for your time this morning.
No, and thank you all. I know that Ross engages with you frequently, and I've taken a number of actions, and I will speak to him when he returns later on this week.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
Bye. Okay, item number 6, which is the Area Roads Capital Programme. And we're joined by Gordon MacDonald, who is the Roads Operation Manager, as well as Colin Howell, who's the Head of Infrastructure. So good morning to both of you. Gordon,
morning,
I'll just hand over to you, and you can present this report, and I'm sure there'll be a few questions after.
Okay, good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. The report is the Area Roads Capital Programme for 22-23. Details our proposals and the budget allocations associated with the report are contained in paragraphs 5.1. The key issue to note there is that the budget allocation hasn't been finalised yet. It will be subject to the capital budget being approved in Inverness at a point in the future. Should there be any alteration in the budget levels, they will be adjusted as appropriate. The one other thing I'd say about the allocation has been highlighted in paragraph 5.3, in that in 2021-22 we accelerated our spend to take advantage of the area being quieter and gains that could be made in productivity, as in members will be aware of the additional works that were undertaken in Portree and significant additional works that are undertaken in Raasay. Now, the final value of all that is still to be tallied up, and clearly that would be taken off our allocation for this year. Hence, we've taken the decision that there will be no surface dressing undertaken this year, and that should balance up with the additional work that we undertook last year. The schemes that we intend, there are 15 highlighted in Appendix 1. They all are deserving. A lot of them are in significantly poor condition, and I'd recommend that the members approve the schemes that have been allocated. I'll take any questions that members have.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Councillor Finlayson.
Thank you very much, Gordon, and thanks, Colin, for coming as well. So hopefully when the budget allocation is approved, we're going to see a nice healthy budget allocation. So we look forward to that. We know that how hard the roads team are working in very difficult conditions. We also recognise that through the Scottish Roads Maintenance Survey, our roads are deteriorating, and it's probably the issue that we get most representation about as members is the condition of our roads. And of course, every community member who contacts us is concerned about what's happening in their area. And we do recognise that we haven't got enough resource to do everything, but we also need to make sure that we have got a strategic and a planned approach to things, because that's the only way we'll improve our roads across Skye and Raasay. So I think what you've identified in the programme, Gordon, is what we all recognise as being some of our worst roads. We also recognise why these have been chosen. So I've got no issue with that. Reading the report, though, it's where are we in terms of flexibility? That's the planned programme, but we all know that communities and individuals and even ourselves see areas that can deteriorate quite quickly. And of course, just now with this wet weather, where are we in the flexibility to also be responsive to the remedial work that needs done in areas? And you know, in the South End, for example, Killakin, Breckish, Slate, and I know further up the island there are other areas. So what flexibility have we got to make sure that we can cope with these areas? I know that we're getting the Patcher Pro, and that's fantastic news. And I'm sure whoever's going to be taking charge of that one has been trained. So again, it's the flexibility. Will the Patcher Pro afford additional flexibility? And how can we make sure that we get the best use of that received piece of plant? And finally, where are we in terms of bodies and vacancies in Skye and Raasay? Because we do know that we have had vacancies for some time. We do know that the roads team over the years has been cut, but we need to make sure that we're at full strength, because our communities are really concerned about our roads, and we do appreciate the work that's been done, but let's maximise what we can do.
Okay, Chair, I'll take those in kind of reverse order. In terms of the vacant posts, we have 2 vacant posts in Broadford that are still outstanding. We currently have an operative on hire from Global who's helping out, assisting. There has been a bit of activity recently where there are 3 individuals that have put themselves forward, all who seem to have relatively good backgrounds and hold HGV licenses, who we are hoping to arrange interviews with very shortly. And hopefully, were 2 of them to be successful, that would take us back to our capacity. In terms of the Scottish Road Maintenance Condition Survey, members will be aware from the report in December at E&I. Highland Council are currently sitting 26 out of 32 local authorities in the ranking. We've fallen relatively dramatically. The upshot of the report, in effect, was to state that approximately 26 million pounds of annual capital funding would be required to basically stand still, and 195 million would be required to put us back to a relatively good position. And unfortunately, even with the additional monies that have been welcome over the last year, the additional 20 million and the additional health and prosperity budgets, I think that takes the council to something like 21 million in the year, which is still 5 million or so short of the 26 million that was quoted in that report. So we do have difficulties, and we do have a significant backlog of works to undertake. In terms of flexibility for undertaking works, we have a resource of 16. When we do undertake capital works, surfacing, surface dressing programs, the vast majority of those resources are taken up undertaking that particular activity. We can undertake a couple of other things, maybe a bit of grass cutting or a bit of ditching individually on a side road somewhere. However, it would be unlikely that if we were surfacing at the same time, we would have a programme of major patching underway. It would be either one or the other. The Pothole Pro that is coming, it is the operator has been trained, and we're currently still waiting on its arrival, but it is due imminently. It will start off its life assisting us in the surfacing, with our resurfacing, milling joints and such like, to get used to the workings of the machine. Once our surfacing is complete, we will then endeavour to go out undertaking major patching on the main roads in the first instance, undertaking permanent repairs. Whilst that's undergoing, the only other work that would be undertaken is probably emergency patching on some side roads. In order to be flexible, we're probably a few operatives short. 16 doesn't allow us to have two major operations running at the same time. But if we had a slightly additional resource, we may be able to have two significant operations running at the same time. In terms of flexibility within the capital programme, members, the programme is before you today. Were there to be significant deterioration occurring on another part of the network before the end of the winter, the only way that could be dealt with is by removing something from the existing programme and replacing it with something that is more needy. I'm trying to think, is there anything that I've missed out?
Can I just come in, Councillor Finlayson, just to add a little bit to that? It's very important that we get the programme approved, because there's an awful lot of planning to make sure that we are in the best possible position, and also we need to do notifications. I think there is the recognition that that if there is serious deterioration, that the report identifies that we do have the ability to work with members through the ward business meetings, and so there is a degree of flexibility. And Gordon's quite right about the Pothole Pro. We've actually taken delivery of a couple of the machines, and we are working with those machines to make sure that we get the best productivity. And so we're working about exactly how much plant, with the nature of the plant, how we deliver surfacing materials to it to make the best use of those Pothole Pros. The feedback we're getting is exceptionally good, so we're very positive it's going to make a significant difference. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Colin. Councillor Callum Munro.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, Gordon. Thank you for the report. Good morning, Colin, too. Thanks for coming to Area Committee. Just a couple of things. I mean, just to put, first of all, we're under no illusions about the state of our roads in Skye and Raasay. We'll have to acknowledge the work done by Gordon and his team throughout the year to mitigate that and to improve the worst bits of our network. Now, I was in the A82 and A87 on Friday, and just to give it context, there's sections of the A82 which are dreadful, particularly in Lochaber. So, I mean, it's a national problem, and that's a main trunk road. Gordon, just a couple of things. In 5.3, you're making clear there's going to be no surface dressing in the year ahead. But really, when people aren't surface dressing, we'll be resurfacing. So the time spent in the past in resurfacing is effectively going to be extra time resurfacing sections of roads. So that's what our constituents will see. My last point is about the road maintenance conditions survey. Now, we're at 26th place out of 32 councils. Maybe yourself and Colin can respond to this. I mean, I would presume that placing is historic. I mean, if we've spent all this money in the last 18 months with more to come in the year ahead, that isn't necessarily where we are. And the other comment I heard about that ranking is that effectively the more we spend on our roads, the harder it is to actually get up the ranking. So although we might be at 26th, it might not actually be a true indication of our roads. Thank you both.
Chair, in terms of the Scottish Road Maintenance Condition Survey, if we go back to 2011-12, the SPI for Highland was 29.3, and we were 11th in the table. So we have a significant drop down from 11th to 26th in the intervening years. The other thing that was highlighted in the report, the Scottish Road Maintenance Condition Survey report, was the amount of money that various areas were spending within. I think the Scottish average provided by APSI, which is the Association of Public Service Excellence, was £6,953 per kilometre, and Highland Council spends 32% of that figure. So that may be part of the reason that we have our roads are failing slightly. And as I said previously, I think the capital spend for last year and this coming year is effectively something like 21 million. The required amount just to stand still is a figure of 26. So even with all the additional resource or income we've received and will receive this year, we're still a long way short of being able to effectively stand still. So with that kind of level, the deterioration, we're at risk of the deterioration continuing.
The only thing I'd add to that, Councillor Munro, is the surveys that are undertaken annually only do about there's a 4-year rolling programme, so it's much more important to look at trends rather than individual years, because we're only taking a snapshot, and so consequently when we see that investment, it'll actually take a number of years for us to see the benefits of that investment filtering through. But you're quite right, there's a bit of an irony there that if you spend not very much. There's 2 SPIs in terms of the road condition. Well, one is the actual condition of the road itself. The other is how much maintenance you spend per kilometre. And clearly, if you spend a little amount, that's regarded as good. Whereas, us roads engineers recognise that you actually need a certain level of investment. We're pleased to hear that there's going to be discussions about that in the forthcoming budget. So, thank you for your questions, Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Councillor Callum McLeod.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Colin and Gordon, for your report. There are some eye-watering kind of challenges there that you've outlined, given the huge network that we have of roads, and I think it is a credit to Gordon and his team, all the hard work they do to get us where we get. And I think it's comforting also, and will be for constituents, to hear that there's a degree of flexibility and a contingency within there for additional works in the future for members to look at. And just an observation, I think the jet patcher is a real tremendous asset for the future as well. So that's it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Colin.
And just a little correction, the pothole row, I think, was the machine that was being referred to, but it's also worth noting that whilst we are surfacing at the start of next year, we will have a jet patcher on hire for a period of 6 to 8 weeks as well. So that helps us, whilst we are surfacing, jet patcher will be tackling potholes on side roads elsewhere. It will only require a driver and one other individual to be there. So whilst we're surfacing, we can continue filling some potholes in certain locations using the jet patcher. The Pothole Pro will be being utilised as part of the surfacing, but once that programme is complete, we will then embark on a programme of permanent patching utilising the Pothole Pro.
Thank you, Gordon. Just a couple of things from me. We all know that potholes are a big challenge in our communities, and I think one of the things that frustrates a lot of people is the fact that they seem to be filled in and then they empty very quickly. So there's high expectation around the whole Pothole Pro. And is there examples of other areas, even within Highland, where the Pothole Pro has been used and the impact and the difference it's made? And just one last time as a councillor, maybe I'll ask it beyond May, but white lining, where are we in terms of white lining? I was over in Portalong a couple of weekends ago, and that junction at the Free Church, where the junction as you go down towards Carbist or on to Talisker, I know it's one that's brought up, but it's an accident waiting to happen.
In terms of white lining, there's two aspects of white lining. You will have noticed that there's a lot of central line missing. We did approximately 20 kilometres of surface dressing up between the 863 and the 850 last year, and it still remains unlined. Unfortunately, we don't have that type of equipment ourselves. It's been a number of years since we have had that, or anybody qualified to drive such a vehicle or operate such plant. So the council, or we, rely on an annual tender, and that annual tender appears to have failed. It has been difficult to get contractors to head out to the extremes of the area, given that they're based in central Scotland. The work they require to do is very weather dependent, and we are asking them to come up here to undertake works. And also, once the weather improves, the other difficulty that they have is it's horrendously expensive to find any accommodation. So it appears they're all very loath to come to this part of the world based on the tender that we have in place. Now, there will be ongoing discussions as to how we're going to get round that, but meantime, I will effectively try and spot price contractors, probably contractors that are on the existing tender and the trunk road, to see if we can get that lining undertaken. In terms of Carbist, we do have the facility to undertake those lines, but again, we require a bit of weather. We do have an item of plant sitting in the shed in the yard, which is as yet unused, but will, I'm determined, be out and about shortly once the temperature goes up and the weather improves. The small item of plant delivers effectively paint as opposed to a hot material, so it requires relatively good and mild weather to allow that to dry effectively. But as soon as we can, we will address those issues.
Thank you, Gordon.
Can I just jump in,
Yeah.
Councillor Gordon? The issue that Gordon has experienced in Skye has been replicated throughout the Highland. We had a framework contract for road markings, and they are very loath to come, as Gordon said, and it's not just an area issue for you. So consequently, we are looking at a different procurement method because a framework contract doesn't work for us. So we are looking to put out a contract for Pan Highland to get all those road markings, that backlog of road markings completed. So we are taking active measures to try and address that, because that's a problem that not only is Gordon's experience. In terms of the Pothole Pro, I'd just like to explain, we're doing an awful lot of temporary repairs to potholes at the moment. The Pothole Pro will cut the joints, it will plane out the materials. We are then putting hot material back in, and that will be compacted in. It's a very different process to the temporary works that we've had to do, and those will be permanent repairs. So you will see a marked difference in the approach to pothole repair in the use of that machine over some of the things that we've been having to do because of expediency and lack of available budgets. So hopefully that helps.
No, thank you. Thanks for that, Colin.
Can I just add to that, in that inevitably, because of the method of working employed by the Pothole Pro, these are permanent repairs, and by their very nature, whilst we will be as efficient as we possibly can, it will be a relatively slow process, or not slow process, but slow in terms of delivering the whole backlog that's out there. So whilst we are utilising the Pothole Pro, we will still have to undertake filling potholes by means that we have previously, be it emergency, using cold material, or be it on a day that isn't ideal in terms of weather conditions, where the hot box is filling potholes on a side road, where we can just about get away with it. But it won't be the case that the Pothole Pro will be working and we'll be leaving everything else. Pothole Pro will be working, but when it isn't, we'll still be utilising other means of filling potholes in other areas, because the backlog is that significant.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gordon. Well, thank you both for attending today. The recommendations are in 2.1. Members are asked to approve the 2022 and 2023 Area Roads Capital Programme. Are we all agreement?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Well, thanks both for coming in today. I know your roles are very challenging, and we appreciate all the work that you do, as well as all your workers too. So again, pass on our thanks to everybody involved in our roads and what they do. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to item 7, which is the Isle of Skye and Raasay HRA Capital Programme. And we're joined by Izzy McKeever, who is the Housing Investment Officer. Good morning, Izzy.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, members, for allowing me to present this report to you today for your consideration. I'll just highlight a few of the items on it. Section 5 outlines the principles we followed in putting together the programme and the resources that are available to your area. Appendix 1 details the actual plan. The Aids and Adaptations budget is ring-fenced, and as such will be dedicated to helping our disabled clients live a more independent life. And for the mainstream, address lists are not actually drawn up yet, but these will be drawn up with support from the local maintenance team, and will focus on the priorities there. I'm happy to take any questions or any comments that you have on it.
Thank you, Izzy. Councillor Finlayson.
Okay, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Izzy. We know, Izzy, that there's real concern that post-April, there's going to be a huge pressure on all tenants around about heating. The cost of energy, etc. And we have got heating replacement funding in there of 60,000. I suppose the question is there any central budget that can support that? Because 60,000 probably wouldn't get a lot done in terms of upgrading our heating. And in terms of the environmental improvements, so we've got a substantial budget there. We've got the carry forward there. And of course, members are feeding into that. And I personally have done that on a couple of occasions. It'd be quite good if we could get maybe regular updates about where we are with this, because I think in terms of maybe some of the fabric and the maintenance and even the decor of some of our properties, it is a priority. Because sometimes even if you improve the look of a building, it can lift people's spirits, and it certainly proves that. So it's really just to say, I think that's a very important budget that we need to make sure we get spent. But we're also happy as members to support flexibility for that, some of that budget to support maybe some of the other key areas. And it's really just to check that that is appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Finlayson. The current budget is a smaller budget this year, just because we are trying to catch up with capital works from the past 2 years. Obviously, the pandemic has had an effect on work, so we are running behind with projects. We do have the option, if everything is going well, that we can accelerate from future years. And obviously, we're hoping for the next financial year to be able to look at a 3 or a 5 year programme. So like I say, the option to accelerate does exist. Obviously, if it was a case of a heating system failed outright, that would be replaced irrespective of budgets. As regards the environmental budget, we are quite happy if members are in agreement that we can use that towards heating systems, insulation or windows and doors, if that is something that the members would like to consider. We do appreciate that it is going to be very hard on tenants come April. Tenants are starting to experience it now with fuel rises. So we do put in place options to help them understand the heating system and how to work it more appropriately. We can get independent heating advice for them as well, and we can also look at welfare support referrals to see if they're entitled to any additional help to try and help ease the cost of the fuel increases.
Thank you, Izzy. Callum Monroe.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Izzy. Thank you for the report. I think it's a good report. Thank you for that. And I approve the capital programme as it stands. The only comment I would make, and it relates to just energy efficiency and the impending crisis of fuel poverty, which is going to come our way. I think the energy efficient Scotland programme, I think, is a case of getting that as widely advertised as possible, making people, even if it involves going a door-to-door type awareness of this campaign, because there are lots of people in our wards who would qualify or could benefit from this. I think that's central money which we should make use of. So I think it's getting the word out as widely as possible that there is some support in terms of insulation and heating systems. Thanks, Izzy.
Thank you, Councillor Monroe. We certainly are interested in trying to educate our tenants and make them aware of any grants or additional funding that is available. It's something that we would work in conjunction with the tenant participation officers and housing management, but we will certainly look at that more thoroughly in future.
Thank you. Callum MacLeod.
Morning, Izzy, and thanks for that report. That's very useful. And it's heartening to hear you talk about support for tenants, with the kind of inevitability of the cost crisis in fuel coming down the tracks for tenants. It's great that you can offer support, advice, and find the most cost-effective ways for tenants. So I think that's really important. And thanks again. Thank you. I support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Callum. Well, the recommendations are before us in 2.1, just to note the allocation of resources to the Skye and Raasay area and to note the guideline investment priorities as set out in section 5. And yeah, so we're all in agreement.
Agreed.
Well, thank you, Izzy, for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, on to item 8. We're joined by Fiona Cameron, the Programme Manager for the Highland Coastal Communities Fund. Good morning, Fiona. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'll just hand over to you, and then I'm sure there'll be a few comments and questions after your presentation.
Great, thank you, Chair, and morning, everybody. So I won't go into too much detail in general about the fund because members are very aware of it from the work done last year. But it's the Highland Coastal Communities Fund, and the allocation to Skye and Raasay for this year is £493,223. So we've got 3 projects for your consideration today. And I would like to make members aware of a couple of changes that have arisen since the paperwork was issued. So if I just run through the project in turn, if that's okay. The first one is the bagging moor, and that hasn't changed since we sent out the paperwork. So it's a request for £13,750 to purchase a piece of equipment that will allow clippings to be picked up once the grass has been cut. So I'm sure members are aware of the problems that the clippings have been causing, particularly around graveyards and other areas where people are trying to access paths that are becoming slippy. So the intention would be that with that piece of equipment, the clippings are collected and then potentially redistributed as free silage to crofters, although we need to look into the suitability of that. So it's a fairly straightforward application. The project could start straight away, and I don't really have any concerns or issues to raise with that one. Second project is the Camas Cross and Dewsdale initiative, looking to set up a new motorhome service point. So the application that has come out to you, there's been a reduction in costs since we sent out the paperwork. What's happened is we've managed to firm up some of the costs for the chemical waste disposal unit. So that's actually reduced the grant request to £34,332.60, and the total project costs have reduced to just over 148,000. So they're essentially looking for 23% of the total costs from the Coastal Communities Fund. All the other funding for the project's in place, and again, I have no particular concerns or updates to the RAG assessment as a result of that. So hopefully that one also quite straightforward. The third project is a request towards staffing costs at the Old Man of Store facility. It would be to provide 2 years of staffing through two posts on site. And the change that I would like to make members aware of to this application is it was presented as a £57,000 request from Coastal Communities. I'd like to increase that to a £77,000 request. And that is so that in addition to the provision of 2 members of staff, we could put a temporary unit on site as well, which would give an area for staff to shelter and also somewhere to keep their tools. I would suggest that it's fairly integral to the project. And so that in total would take the project costs to 134,000. So just an update to the cover report then, that would mean that the total request for the 3 projects today would be £125,082.60. And should members wish to approve all 3 of the projects, that would leave a balance in Skye and Raasay of £368,140.74. So this is a very quick overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions or provide more information if members would like.
Thanks, Fiona. Councillor Finlayson.
Okay, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Fiona, again for coming to us today with more good news. I think we need to recognise the work that's been done by you and your team, but also how uplifting it is to hear about this disaggregated money coming to our ward. In terms of the projects that you've articulated that are looking for funding, personally, I think they're no-brainers. When you look at the Camas Cross, I mean, they've already received match funding of 111,000 in ARTIV, so we're supporting a project that's nearly there. The bagging moor, we've had representation from our constituents, particularly at graveyards, about how keen they are to see the grass, lifted when the grass is cut. And this is going to make this much, much easier for our employees. So again, a no-brainer. And we know how much time and effort we've invested in the store, the funding that we've received, but we also realise the importance of management of the site and the importance of having people on the site. So again, for me, I think it's money that's well spent, and it will support the income generation aspirations that we've got at that site. So again, for me, a no-brainer. In terms of the 368 that we've got left, 68,000 that we've got left, Fiona, where are we in terms of, or how do you see us moving forward the application process for that funding for the rest of this year? I assume it'll be after the May elections, but have you any thoughts about how the process will work? Because it was a very onerous process the last time round. It maybe was easier for Skye because we tried to link it to our Skye and Raasay Futures plan, but have you any thoughts about how the next phase of applications might move forward?
Are you happy for me to just go ahead and answer that, Chair?
Yes, Fiona.
Yeah, great, thanks. So, yeah, as you mentioned there, Councillor Finlayson, we do have the elections coming up, and obviously that's giving us a period of time where there will be no committee meetings in the immediate future. So we won't actually be able to immediately open and bring forward applications due to this. So, councillors might also be aware that last December we took a report to the Strategic Committee, just really updating members on how the first year of operation of the fund had gone. And what was notable was that in really all areas of Highland, we were extremely oversubscribed in terms of the applications coming forward. So there was a recommendation came from that committee that if possible we could try within areas and with the kind of input from members to refine the priorities for the funding. So make it a bit more focused, and that would certainly help manage expectations from applicants and hopefully make the decision-making process a bit easier. So what we were hoping to do is to use the opportunity where we have a hiatus anyway because of the elections to perhaps go out and engage a bit more widely with the community, the third sector and Skye and Raasay, and see if we can do that refining of priorities. I think in your area, what would be a suitable starting point for that, as you say, is the Skye and Raasay Futures Plan. So I'm aware that that sets out, I think, 6 outcomes already. So we would potentially use those as the basis for what we go out and consult with the community on. And it would be trying to manage that to make sure we're not, going back and asking people the same questions and tiring people out with that. But if we can look at these 6 outcomes and really see where this funding could be focused for best impact, that would give us a really good starting point for the distribution of the funds this year. And with that in mind, then, what I would hope is that we can do an open call for projects towards the end of the election period, so that as soon as the committee meetings start again, following the new administration coming into place at the end of June, we're ready to bring applications forward at that point in time.
Thanks, Fiona. Councillor Munro.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, Fiona. Thanks again for this. Really, your application assessment sheets are really detailed and give us all we need. So I approve these applications. Councillor Finlayson has gone through them. Quite diverse applications, but what we're seeing here are local needs being met by local decisions, and that's really effective. These are really going to make a difference in their various ways. Match funding for the ARTIF in Camas Cross makes complete sense, and really just what we've got here is 15% of the whole money to Highland Council coming to our ward. Over 15%. That's a great news story for our ward, and it's great to see the number of applications we've had for last year. There'll be challenges in the year ahead for the new council, but I think this is really, really positive, and as I say, I approve the applications. Thanks, Fiona.
Thanks, Callum. Councillor MacLeod.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Fiona. Excellent report. I think it would be great if you can do some work to help refine the way the application processes are put in place. I think that will be welcome, and has been alluded to. I think it's been really welcome with the Skye investment plan, the level of engagement there's been, and obviously what you've identified there for immediately looking at for funding is fantastic. Some good, as been said, diverse projects promoting regeneration and sustainability for development. So I think that's great, and I'm happy to approve it. Thanks.
Thank you, Callum. Well, thanks, Fiona. We appreciate all the work you have done to date, and as has been said already, it is a good news story, and it makes a huge difference in our community and will have a major impact. So yeah, it's really is a good news story. So thank you for that. So I think we're all in agreement. Yeah. Okay, so you're staying with us, Fiona, for item 11, which was a late paper. The paper has been uploaded onto the Highland Council website, and it is the Islands Infrastructure Fund. So more money coming this way, which is always welcome.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, and apologies, this had to come out as a late paper, but this is a programme that's part of the National Islands Programme for 2021 to 26, and that programme's got 3 strands, which are the Islands Infrastructure Fund, the Islands Community Fund, and the Healthy Islands Fund. And what we're looking at today is the Islands Infrastructure Fund, which is being delivered through allocations coming from the Scottish Government to local authorities for distribution. So within Highland, that has been an allocation of £510,000, and the eligible areas in Highland, as you're probably aware, would only be Skye, Raasay and the Small Isles. So projects coming forward for this funding need to be able to show that they're delivering against the objectives of the Islands programme, and crucially this year they need to be able to demonstrate that they're in a position to start immediately and deliver their activity quite quickly. And again, this is, I suppose, reflected by the fact this is a late paper coming as well. It's something that has come to us quite late, and this is, you know, the proposal to how best deal with it to ensure that the money is able to be spent in Highland as it's been allocated. So we've got 4 projects that we're proposing to you today for funding. So I'll run through them very briefly, and I'm happy to take any questions. And I'm sure members will be aware of all of these projects already anyway. So the first one is the Kilt Rock car park extension, and we're proposing an allocation of £171,725 to this project. What that would do is complete the funding package and allow them to get started immediately on the provision of a larger car park with a more robust surface, and also undertaking some work to extend the bellmouth opening at the car park so that the entrance is wider to try and ease some of the congestion problems. The second project, again, an RTIF funded project that members have also agreed coastal communities funding for previously, and it's the Algal toilets and parking project. The intention would be to provide new toilets, realigned parking bays, and also a path that links to the village and a chemical waste disposal unit. So the project currently has a shortfall of £48,923, and we would suggest that that again could be funded from the Islands Infrastructure Fund, which would allow them to get underway immediately. Third project is Slate Community Motorhome Facilities, which is a partnership between the Slate Community Trust and Solmarostic College. And again, this is a project looking at motorhome services. So there'd be a motorhome service point with 8 electric hookups, chemical waste disposal unit, and showers and toilets. And they also have secured RTIF funding towards this project already. So from the Islands Infrastructure Fund, we would propose an allocation of £109,992, which would complete the funding package required and allow them to get underway. And then the final project that we're suggesting an allocation towards would be £49,360 for a programme of road improvements on Raasay. So we've had some discussions with the roads manager, and we're aware that that could again get underway immediately, and it would allow for some fairly significant works to be done to improve the road network on Raasay. So all in all then, that would give a total allocation to the Skye and Raasay area from that available pot of money of £380,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Yeah, definitely another good news story. Councillor Finlayson.
You'd almost think it was Christmas here in Skye and Raasay today. All the positivity and all the good news that we're hearing. So, I mean, the Islands Infrastructure Fund, I mean, 380,000 from a fund of over 500,000 coming to Skye and Raasay is fantastic news for everyone, for our residents and for us as members. So it's great news. And I think what's really important, Fiona, is the fact that it's not as if we're spending this money randomly. What we're doing is we're targeting the money at projects that have already got partnership funding, and we're needing match funding to make them a reality. What's not to like there? They also tie in with our ambitions as part of the Skye and Raasay future. So again, I think it's really, really important that we support these projects, because they're projects that have been in the making for some time. Once they become a reality, there'll be another tranche of projects that hopefully we'll be able to support. So I think it's as I said, as Christmas comes early on Skye and Raasay today, and I absolutely approve the recommendations within this paper.
Thanks, John. Councillor MacLeod.
Thanks, Chair. And yes, just echo Councillor Finlayson's sentiments. You've come bearing gifts to us, Fiona. I think that's really heartening, and it's great. And all the projects that have been outlined here, these are big infrastructure challenges that we've heard about for some years needed on Skye. And I think this is very welcome and going forward. So I just like to say I support what's been outlined. Thank you.
Thanks, Callum Munro.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Fiona, you're welcome in Skye and Raasay anytime with this sort of positive stories. Again, I just agree with recommendations, and thank you for your work on this.
Thanks, Callum. Well, thanks again, Fiona. We appreciate all your work, and yeah, it is a good news story, and I'm sure it's going to make a big difference here. So we're all delighted this morning. So thanks for joining.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Okay, we're on to back to item 9, which is the place-based investment programme, and we're being joined by Alan Webster, who's the Principal Regeneration Officer. And we've heard a lot about Christmas and bearing gifts, Alan, so we're delighted that you're here too to bring some good news.
Yep, more gifts, members. Not to the scale of my colleague there, but hopefully more good news. And hopefully a short and hopefully straightforward paper before you today. Just quickly to recap, the Scottish Government have awarded the Council just under 2 million ring-fenced place-based investment programme funding for 21-22. On the 1st of September, members of E&I Committee agreed an area distribution of the grant, just as we did with the Town Centre Fund before, and that resulted in your committee being allocated £76,594. Now, you'll probably remember last year, autumn time, actually the 4th of October, you expressed a desire to invest that allocation in existing Town Centre Fund projects that may be experiencing deliverability challenges caused by escalating costs, and also want to look at where value could be added to existing Town Centre Fund projects. And you asked that I bring back proposals for your consideration. So I hope that this paper delivers on that expectation. Now, I don't propose to read through sections 3, 4, 5 and 6 of the report, members. The background and objectives of the fund have been covered in written briefings and at that ward business meeting in October. So if I can move straight to section 7, the proposals themselves. The first one being Broadford Toilet Project. I think you're very familiar with this and the challenges that the community company have faced there. In essence, they have a Town Centre Fund award, around 1 award of 99,483, around 2 award of 28,052, and it's just not quite got them over the line. So the company there are requesting 29,465 to augment those previous awards. In essence, that would allow them to deliver this project immediately. Without this additional investment, the project will not proceed. In terms of eligibility, there's absolutely no issues with this one. And if you approve today, members, the project will be on site in the coming weeks, probably next month, actually. If I then move to Portree Community Centre, again, you'll probably remember about a year ago, you did allocate 19,000 TCF round 2 to refurbishing the small hall, the bar area there and the disabled toilet of the community centre. The community trusts are now seeking 38,249 to undertake another phase of refurbishment works there, essentially to open the main hall of the community centre and basically open that up to activities and events such as live performances, sports activities, exhibitions, meetings, etc. Again, like the Broadford project, I have attached the full proposals to Appendix 1, and there's absolutely no issues with deliverability or eligibility with that particular project. If you don't mind, Chair, I would like to bring in the ward manager just at this point in terms of section 9 of the report. Now, a key requirement of the decision-making process agreed by E&I for the PBI in September was that members take account of the views of community planning partnerships when allocating the funding. So if you don't mind, I'll just bring in Willie, just make a verbal comment in that regard.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly confirm that both those projects, when they go ahead, they will deliver on the outcomes that are within the Skye and Raasay future plan. And during the consultation, the community planning partnership were very much part of that and have since indicated their support for that plan. So it meets with the partnership's approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Willie. And
Thank you.
Just finally, members, section 10. Now, if you're minded to approve the 2 proposals before you, it does result in 8,832 still to be committed. Essentially what I'm saying there is hold it as a contingency. If any of those projects require additional investment, we can move quickly to provide that support. Given that the expectation is that this grant is committed by the end of the financial year, I've recommended that delegated authority be granted to Malcolm MacLeod and yourself, Chair, in order to move swiftly to make any additional awards if necessary. And that concludes the report.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate all your work in this. Councillor John Finlayson.
Alan, you probably look a bit more like Santa Claus than Fiona does. Before I make comment, can I just again, Alan, thank you for the work you've done with the 2 communities around about this, because I do know, how stretched you are as an officer, and you've changed your remit to some. So, and I do know how appreciative both communities are. So, can I thank you for your input and support, Alan. It has been well received by the communities and by us as members. And I think the way the report is written, you've articulated very clearly that was previously known as town centre funding, is now place-based investment funding. It would be very short-sighted of us not to see through the projects that were already in place in Portree and Broadford. We know the additional costs of materials over the last years, in particular the Broadford project, need this additionality. So I think it's a no-brainer. And obviously next year, hopefully when we get our new allocation of place-based investment, we'll be looking at things differently. That's more across Skye. But in this instance, we're completing projects that have got funding. We need to see them through, and we need to see a result. So for me, again, it's a no-brainer, and I am happy to agree to the recommendations. And once again, Alan, thanks for your input.
Thank you, John. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alan. Excellent report, really detailed report, as is the appendix. I can't add much to Councillor Finlayson's remarks. This is really regeneration. These projects need a little bit of help to go over the line, and these again are projects which will make a considerable contribution to the communities in which they are. So again, thank you, and I approve your work and your recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Callum MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alan. Yeah, I echo much of what's been said there. Two excellent projects, and particularly the toilets at Broadford. I think, you know, it's a vital gateway and is a passing place for people coming through both Skye and travelling to the Western Isles. So I think it will be really welcome for everyone. So yeah, just welcome the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Well, we're all in agreement with this paper. So again, thanks, Alan, for all your work. I know the work you've done has been appreciated across the whole of Highland, and in the timescale as well that you've done it. So I know it doesn't go unnoticed the amount of work you've done. So thank you this morning for that.
Thanks, members, and thanks for the kind words.
Thank you, Alan.
Cheers.
Okay, we're on to item number 10, which is the Skye and Raasay future. And Scott Dalgarnio, the Development Plans Manager, is with us this morning. So good morning to Scott. I'll just hand over to you, Scott, and I'm sure there'll be a few questions and comments after your presentation.
Thank you, members, and we're just hoping I do enough this morning to drown out the noise of the crash that's happening in the next room. So, so members, you asked us when we reported SARF to the committee for adoption in August last year. You asked us to seek buy-in and adoption from community partners and to confirm the governance arrangements for Skye and Raasay future, and that's what this report seeks to do today, with particular reference to the recommendations before you. The story map is being updated to reflect that the buy-in from partners, and indeed the terms of reference that has now been approved through the initial meeting of the programme board, who met for the first time at the end of January, is enclosed at Appendix 1 for your consideration and discussion. And indeed, that terms of reference has been drafted with that feedback in mind, the full consideration of the feedback from the community organisations, and has backed up the particular role that those groups are looking to take, who will be invited in to discuss issues as they arise with that governance group, who intend to meet regularly to keep on top of things. It's important to flag with we've seen reference to SARF as an investment plan, and I think it's important to clarify, particularly hearing the discussion that you've had around items today, that the SARF aims to be the glue that binds things together, as opposed to bringing new investment funds with it. It does intend to act as the guide for how money is spent, so it's really useful to hear that it's starting to have that kind of steer over how we're spending money and how we hopefully make better bang for our buck. So that's something that we're looking to reinforce today. And on the back of your discussion today, members, we'd be looking to issue something that helps to kind of showcase what's the amount of activity that's going on. So alongside the kind of formal sign off by you today and recognition of the sign off by community organisations and partners, we'd intend to publish a so-called highlights document that has been shared with you. That I intend to share with you right now. So this is a highlights document that really just tries to capture not all of the activity underway, but some of the headlines of activity that's underway that really is showing how we're delivering against the objectives, the outcomes that were agreed with partners, so that we're clear and we remain focused on how we're delivering those outcomes for the future that people expect us to be shaping our activity around. So this highlights document is intended to be published and issued on the back of your consideration of this item today, along with the announcement of the arrangements that have been approved in terms of the governance group, the programme board. So I appreciate that this relies on some attention for us to keep looking at all that activity that's happening all the time on the ground, and to keep things up to date for people to feel like it's a useful tool for them to be kept up to date. But hopefully today act as a formal sign off and recognition of how we intend to work with partners on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
You're on mute, John.
Oh, my apologies. Just to thank you, Scott, for all the work you've done today. We know it's an incredible amount of work, and again, it doesn't go unnoticed by us as councillors and our communities across Skye and Raasay. So thank you. Councillor Finlayson.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I think it's essential that we do have this sort of highlights and update. So we look forward to seeing that, because I mean the theme of today's committee has been about investment in infrastructure and investment across our ward. And although you haven't come bearing the gifts that all the other speakers have brought to us today, the role of this document, I think, is really crucial, because it is pulling together all the things that we've heard today, all the possibilities that we have going forward, because a lot of these funding streams are recurring. So that's really, really important. So I think everyone will be delighted to see the highlight and the update, because that is a question I often get asked. So what is now happening? We've created a document, but what's been achieved, and how do we know where things are going? So I think that's going to do that. In terms of the governance board, so I see we've got all the sectors across Highland. We're obviously going to include community members as well. Is there an intention that local members will also be included on the board? Because I don't know whether we're included as Highland Council, or whether we've been omitted, or whether we're necessary. But I would think we are, given the decisions we make around funding. But I think it's really important that we do have this board, because we need that governance element, and we also need the transparency that people are asking for. So that's really my comments, Scott.
Thank you, John. Councillor Callum MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. And again, just to reiterate, Scott, thanks very much for all the work that you've done. It's been much appreciated. I think this document is really positive. Again, on the theme of today's presentations, it just cements that. And I think, you mentioned bang for buck. I think that's really important, that you've got that kind of emphasis being put in there, as well as the importance of a collaborative approach going forward. I think these are key issues that this document just solidifies, and yeah, just I'm happy to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Scott. Thank you. Afternoon, actually now, after 12. Thank you for this. Really good to see the Skye and Raasay future going on to its next phase with the project board meeting in January. I think we're just waiting for that to happen. It seems like it's been successful. A lot of community and stakeholder buy-in, which is what we want. I think that in terms of the collaborative approach and its ownership, there's a sentence there which says it is the project board's collective role to deliver and own SARF SARF. So it's not Highland Council, it's not HIE, it's a collective responsibility. I think that's really, really crucial. I know there's so much going on in our ward, and I'm looking forward to hearing how the board oversees that and how the board responds to community development and how it all works together. But this is really positive. Just looking back at the report, it's just good to see us back on the back on the committee agenda. And I think, as Councillor Finlayson says, a highlights document. I think it's important that we actually sell this, that people realise it's not just, but it is actually achieving things. So I think regular highlight updates on social media or whatever, I think that's really important. So looking forward to the first highlights. I think from my point of view in North East Skye, and I start looking south and west, there's so much going on. There's so many things going on, and it's really positive. So I think Scott, with your contribution, with Malcolm's contribution to the project, is in good hands. Really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks, Callum. Yeah, I would just like to agree. I think it's incredible the amount of work that has been done in this over the last however long. And I think the Skye and Raasay Future webpage is a really good resource for communities as well as ourselves to just see all the updates and the projects that are in there. And it would just be good to maybe promote that more and more so that people have this tool that's very accessible to them, because there's a lot of information there and it's well presented. So we really appreciate that, as well as all your work, Scott. So thank you very much. So members are asked to agree the recommendations in 2.1, which I think we've all agreed in our individual presentation. Agreed?
Yeah, I think Scott's going to come back there, John, with a couple of comments.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. There was a couple of comments there just about the governance arrangements in particular. It's perhaps an oversight that we haven't mentioned members explicitly, because certainly we'd see members as obvious partners in kind of coming into the board as and when you feel that is necessary. And I think we want to make sure that the board is obviously has the cross-sector representation, but also the awareness to deal with the issues that are before us as partners working for the area, and so that we're tuned into what's happening and the particular issues we have to address at any point in time. So maybe that's a subtle tweak we can make just to clarify that members are an absolute central partner in all of that. Just if I may pick up on a couple of points that were raised. We talked about the collective collaborative role of the programme board in particular, and the discussion at that inception meeting of the board was really around the partners feeling like they were agents. We're all agents for delivering SARF and reinforcing the delivery of those outcomes, because if there's any public expectation at all, it's the fact that we are all as partners working towards those as objectives. So I'm hoping it's actually simplifying the kind of framework that we're working to. We all know what benefits we all expect to have to accrue or come from the projects that we're all delivering. And another thing to mention to the committee, which I meant to mention as part of my introduction, was that since the last committee meeting that we discussed this, obviously the organisation, the Highland Council, but also the community partnership, has formally agreed the so-called place-based approach, which our experience with Partners on Skye has helped to influence and inform. So it's hoped that we're setting a template for how it's done elsewhere as well. So thank you for your support in carrying out all that work, and we look forward to continuing our hard work on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. That's the last agenda item. Thanks to everybody for attending and presenting this morning. I think this is our last formal meeting together as the Skye and Raasay Area Committee, And I think despite all the challenges over the last two years, I think much has been achieved. And one of the statements I hang on to in life and various parts of my life is, we might not be where we want to be, but at least we're not where we once were. And I think that probably sums up what's happened over the last few years as a council together. I know we've all been impacted by COVID over the last 2 years in many ways, and I've been impacted in many ways myself. So for me, it's time to take a different route in life, and I'll not be standing at the next election. But I just want to say it's been a privilege to serve Skye and to Raasay. And you know, like us all, we never take people's votes for granted, and we just are humbled when people go out and vote for us. But I just want to say on a personal level, it's been a real privilege working with the three of you, and not forgetting Ronald in the early days as well. And I think we've all got on as a council. We might not always agree, but we've always moved on together, and I think that's always a healthy partnership. So thanks to the three of you. Also to Willie McKinnon as well. I think Willie does an incredible amount of work. Quite often it goes unnoticed maybe by people, but he does an incredible amount of work, and we just really appreciate him as councillors, and we're incredibly lucky to have him in Skye and Raasay. And of course all the officers of the council, and Alistair for clerking over the years. It's hard to believe that 5 years are up already, but just want to say a big thanks from my part, and wish you all the best in the future.
John, can I maybe come in and endorse what you've just said about officers and the commitment, and particularly Willie. Willie's with us for a while longer, so but I'd like to express my thanks to you as chair of the area committee, John. We do know your own challenges over the last few years, but how well you've handled these, and also the support that you've given the rest of us as members. So we wish you well for the future, John. And as indicated earlier, we will have a party somewhere, might even be in your house, who knows. But thank you very much for all you've done and for the commitment you've given to our area over the years.
Thanks, John. Thank you, appreciate that. I think that's our meeting finished, so we'll see you all soon.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Chair.